The interest rate on credit cards should not be capped at 10%. I'll tell you why. This is easily one of my most controversial opinions, so hear me out. Generally speaking, you either believe in free markets or you don't, and since every state already has its own usury laws, why 10%? Who's picking 10% and why that number? The reason this is a topic of conversation is because Rep. Anna Paulina Luna and AOC recently teamed up for this proposal. And like nearly all bureaucratic proposals, the road to the dumpster is paved with good intentions. The very simple beginning point is that any product or service is priced based upon market demand. If a marketplace existed to provide 10% interest credit cards to pretty much anybody, it would already exist. And the reason that it doesn't, or that it's very hard to find, is because there would not be a lot of money to be made by the company loaning the money. The number one factor of extending credit to a person from a lending institution is the probability that it will be repaid. If lending institutions, of which there are many, determine that the interest rate that needs to be charged to people to take into account the risk of not being paid back is, say, 18%, and you just had the bureaucracy cap it at 10%, what happens? What happens is that the credit is not extended, meaning that the person that would have borrowed or would have been willing to borrow as a willing and consenting adult at, let's say, 18% or even 12% will not be able to legally have access to that money. And if a person has such a low credit score or a bad credit rating or whatever, they're not going to let them have credit at all. So if you, a consenting adult, would be like, hey, I'm willing to pay 12, and the government says, no, you can't, then you get no money at all. And what other choice do you have then? Now you have to go to less credible lending institutions or go to a pawn shop or something like that. Or hard money loan or something worse. The general idea is that you believe that a consenting and willing adult is capable of making their own decisions about how they borrow money. Nobody is forcing somebody to take out a credit card. You can choose not to. It's your own free will. And a lot of these credit cards, they have an annual fee, for example, for access to that credit, but they also give you bonuses like airline miles or cash back or access to free hotel rooms or a multitude of other things, discounts, in exchange for the ability to have a higher credit card interest rate, which some people would prefer. Many people choose not to pay any interest at all, and they just accumulate the points or the rewards or the airline miles or whatever else, and they never pay a penny of interest. They just utilize the ledger and the free extended credit for 30 days, and then they pay the bill off. And then the other people that are willing to take that credit card at a higher interest rate that maybe need to borrow it at that higher rate, well, they pay it and make it worthwhile for those people to extend that credit to all those other people. If you make the credit card interest rate 10%, it's not like a business just says, okay, I'm just going to deal with not making that balance. I'm just going to eat it. What they would do is not extend that credit to people with a lower credit score, perhaps make the credit limit considerably lower, or make the annual fee for that credit card considerably higher. If it's $200 or $300 now, what if it was $2,000 a year to have access to that credit card and you had to have a 780 credit score? A line of credit is a valuable service as it is not a loan. It is a ledger that could become a loan should you choose. Let's say that you need to borrow $8,000 for a purchase. Let's say it's a dental bill, for example. If no credit card existed, how would you obtain that money? Well, let's use the example of I need to go and I need to get a loan. You have to apply for that loan, you need to get that, and that money comes to you in some lump sum. Okay, here's $8,000, here's your loan. Once you pay that $8,000 back, if you were to need money again, you would need to obtain another loan. And then let's say at some point in that equation or in that process, you need another $1,000, but you don't need another $8,000. Where do you get the $1,000 from? You would need to obtain another loan for the $1,000. Whereas with a line of credit, you could spend the $8,000, spend the $1,000, pay them both down. You could pay it down in 20 days if you really wanted to. It is a revolving access to cash. But with a line of credit or a credit card, you do not accrue interest on the first day. So you could make a purchase on the first day of the month, and then that month could end 30 days later, and then you could have 15 days to pay that balance back, meaning that you're not accumulating any interest for 45 days. Whereas with a loan, the loan becomes available on day one, and you start accumulating interest for all 45 days. Now, obviously, this is a complicated topic, and for brevity, I'd like to make the video not 15 minutes long. But the point is that the bureaucracy coming in and setting this rate and essentially telling the businesses what price they have to charge for the service that they offer just means that in order to make money, they will have to go about some other way. Like I said, charging an access to the loan or some other thing, reducing the amount of rewards that you might get, or potentially not extending credit to somebody that doesn't meet a certain criteria, or perhaps have a time horizon of when it needs to get paid back, or perhaps some other collateral that you might have to offer. Free market capitalism has a way of setting prices based on supply and demand. And last time I checked, there were lots of lenders out there. The reason the interest rates are what they are for the credit that they extend is because that's what they need to be based on market prices to consider the risk of not being paid back. That's what they need to charge in order to make money. And every time I do this, people say that I'm like shilling for the banks. They're like, well, why do you want people to suffer? It's like, dude, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you generally find yourself on the right side of most political viewpoints, this is the same thing as saying, why isn't the minimum wage $20? Why isn't money free? Because letting the bureaucracy set the price of products and services as opposed to free market forces and capitalism, you are giving unnecessary power to the bureaucracy to meddle in the free market. And the person that suffers the most is the people at the bottom. The exact people that the program purports to be assisting, it is actually hurting. Because to boil it down to the very, very simple, if you need $10,000 tomorrow desperately and you are willing to pay 12% for it, the bureaucracy says that's illegal now. So now you might be able to access no money at all. This policy is bad. The bureaucracy sells bad ideas by saying these people will be hurt, therefore we have to do something, completely ignoring the new people or the other people that will be hurt as a result of it. Don't let them play into your emotions. Don't let them convince you that because you believe in capitalism and free markets, that you are not empathetic. Because this exact same logic could be used to say, well, why isn't healthcare free? Why isn't housing free? Why isn't food free? Why isn't water free? Why isn't the minimum wage $1,000 an hour? Free market capitalism sorts problems on its own. It sets prices based on supply and demand. And the bureaucracy meddling in it will only create disastrous results, sometimes unforeseen results. Don't let them sell you on emotion and perceived empathy. A person that keeps a balanced checkbook is a steward of their money that sees that an interest rate is capped at 10%, for example, might say, well, maybe I will borrow now because it's only 10%. Maybe I will buy that more expensive thing that I don't need, or I will borrow additional money or whatever because it's capped at the 10%. There's a multitude of disastrous results that come with this. Don't fall for it.